I think we all recognize that caregiving is one of the most meaningful and overwhelming roles many of us will ever step into. In this episode, we talk with Tracy Heath about her new book titled Before Goodbye. Tracy shares a 6-step guide to compassionate caregiving that offers emotional, physical, and financial support when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. She offers a practical and grounded approach to supporting loved ones through illness, aging, and the end of life.
That's right. So if you're caring for a parent, a partner, or a friend, or just simply navigating a complex family dynamic, this conversation will help you move from reactive and overwhelmed to clear and supported. In this episode, we're going to be talking to Tracy about how to create a caregiving plan, how to communicate with family about caregiving responsibilities, which very, very great way to frame it.
Mm-hmm.
How to support a loved one without burning out, and why supporting the caregiver and the family system really does matter. There's going to be practical tools, checklists, and frameworks that you can start using immediately. This episode is for caregivers, grief workers, creatives, and anyone walking alongside loss in any form. Whether you're just beginning or already deep in it, you don't have to figure it out by yourself. We're here for you, and so is Tracy.
Thank
Join us.
Goodness.
Yes.
See you on the other side.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to see you or hear you or whatever. We enjoy you joining us again today. We really appreciate it. I'm the Reverend Wakil David Matthews. On today's episode, we get to meet Tracy Heath. She has a wide variety of experience, which really leads to, I think, a really comprehensive way of looking at the work that she's done and that we're going to talk about today. She has 30 years of experience in the investment industry. She won multiple awards, and so it really shows the amount of skill and dedication that she brings to it. She's also a speaker and educator. And she noted that her wisdom transcends finance because she's also gotten a diploma in acupuncture and in orthomolecular nutrition, which is interesting. Want to know more what that is?
Definitely.
She's also certified as a positive psychology practitioner, mindfulness and meditation teacher, and a coach practitioner. So she really does have this broad knowledge to provide support across multiple areas.
Yes, and I am the Reverend Mother Ana Luisa Armendariz, and thank you for showing up today in this ether space where we are going to be sharing a little bit about Tracy's own profound personal journey, which has been marked by many family losses, through which she has learned what resilience and empathy are and when to call upon those skills. Tracy's unique approach integrates emotional, physical, and financial health, empowering individuals, families, and professionals to navigate life's toughest challenges with grace and insight. She recently launched a book, Before Goodbye, Your Emotional, Physical, and Financial Guide When a Loved One is Diagnosed with a Serious Illness. This is to help other folks who are going to probably find themselves in similar situations. And it's with her wisdom and knowledge that she hopes others can gain clarity and have the courage to go through those moments. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. This is great.
So important. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in. What inspired you to become the person you are today?
So, as we know and we talk about as we're older, that we look back and go, oh, this is why all of these things happened.
Right.
And that's really what happened in my instance, because it wasn't until just a few years ago that I had this moment, and I actually have it. I think it's a calling. Like I just had this voice that said, you have to do this. And it said, you have to write a book. And I, at the time, had been doing triathlons, and I was an outdoor person. I was not one to want to sit at my desk. I've never been the kind of person that says you have to write a book. And I always had that calling. I did not. So I resisted this. But what happened was it was a culmination of my life experiences. And, you know, I had been running a business when I was in my 20s. And now I look back and go, wow, that's really young to be running. Actually, I had 2 businesses going. And during that time, both of my parents were ill with fighting cancer. And it was long distance. My mom lived about an hour in one direction, and my father was dying, and he was about 3 hours in another direction.
Wow.
And I'm at home, or not at a home business, but I had a business in my town, and I had a little one at home and a family, my husband, and so on. And you just manage. You put your head down, you get through it, and then from that, we also had other deaths in the family. Another brother-in-law died suddenly at 40. My grandfather. It was just constant. And you just, like I said, you just go through it. You do what you have to. I sold my business. And I just can't do this anymore. As soon as my mom and dad died, a few years later, it's like, this is too much. I need to step back. And I had a second child. I want to stay home with the baby and be home for a couple of years. And the commitment was 2 years. And I had someone ask me to come into the financial industry and said, you'd be great. So it's like, great, I can do the studies and then go in. So fast forward, I'm in the financial industry, and now I'm experiencing other losses, but I'm helping a lot of my clients. I was a stockbroker. So I was helping clients not trade stocks. I was dealing with families, and my conversations were different than you would call on someone else's in a stockbroker situation. I was dealing with families. I would, someone would come in and say, okay, I have to save for whatever. I would have a conversation about what's going on in your life. Tell me your family situation. And it was quite different. And I had a focus on, you have to live today. Don't just save for your retirement. Live today, experience your life, experience your families. And because my perception was different. Like, I knew my parents didn't live to a retirement age. My mom was 50, my dad was 57.
Wow.
So very young. I was, I was 28 when mom died, and dad died 8 months later. So it was like a lot when I was going through that. But it's like, okay, well, I can do this. And then having 4 deaths in 3 years and planning funerals and doing all of that and so on. And it gives you a different insight than most people at that young age. So as I was doing finances again in a young age in my 30s, again, my perception was from somebody who had experienced a lot more than the average. And so fast forward, I'm getting further and further away from clients and more dealing with financial advisors themselves. And my discussions were around the living today, not just for tomorrow. It's, the investments, but talking about the whole family. And alongside my life in the financial world, which was fabulous, like, you make great money, but my passion was more meditation, mindfulness, and studies. So I got my diploma in acupuncture, and I thought, eventually I'll leave the financial industry and do that. And I was really interested in health and nutrition for my own sake. Personal. It's like, I'm just, why did mom and dad, why were these illnesses? And my brother-in-law with, cancer and so on. So all of these things, I wanted a better handle on nutrition and how we can heal ourselves and so on. So the orthomolecular nutrition was next, and getting that. And I love the psychology of everything, of the financial industry, but of what we're going through. And I just felt compelled to study and learn all of these things. And so as I'm going through life, that's sort of running a parallel to the financial world. But I was like 2 separate worlds, really.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I had experienced the passing of some sibling in-laws who were diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And as we know, the typical timeline is 2 to 5 years.
Yeah,
And
it's a really
there's
hard
no,
one. Yeah.
it is, and there's no cure. There's no real treatments for it. It's long, you just know what's coming. Now, we didn't know with the first brother-in-law. So experiencing that and all the different family dynamics, and the next one and so on. And then fast forward to 2020, when the third sibling was diagnosed with ALS, and she and I had been very close, like sisters. We were often mistaken for sisters. And she was diagnosed. She only had 5 months.
Oh.
So she wasn't with us very long after her diagnosis. And then shortly after that, my brother was diagnosed with cancer. So those were the two. That's when I got the calling. Those two things happened pretty quickly, again, after a span of not, that critical issue of dealing with the family traumas. And that's when I was driving in my car one day, and I'm like, why is this happening? But it wasn't the wow, poor me, this is happening to me. It wasn't. It was, what am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
Because I have all of this experience, and other family members have been reaching out a lot, and especially in areas where you wouldn't think people would reach out to me specifically and say, I need your help. And it was at the moment that I'm driving and I hear you have to write a book. And I'm like, I am not writing a book. I resist it. It's like, there's no way. This is not my thing. It's one of those things I was told never good at in school and all that with the writing, and you're not good at English. Leave that to your sister. And she's the English major. No problem. So I come home and it's like, I call my sister. It's like, you have to write this book. And I tell her about it. And she's like, oh, this is great. Yes. But no, that's your calling. This is not mine. This is you have all that information. So that's how it started.
Yeah,
And then my brother passed at 47. So I'm like, okay, people need this information because it was from the standpoint. And when people were reaching out to me was, and not just for financial, it was all of it. And they would call and say, my husband was diagnosed with fill in the blank. And my mom is whatever. What do we do now? I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell us? I love the fact that your book kind of has like 6 parts to it, right? 6 places that you go through, and of course we all want people to buy your book. We'll give them the link to it.
Yeah.
But maybe tell us a little more about that process, the processes, and how you tie those all together, because they do obviously connect to all the things you've done in your life. So first of all, thanks for the kind of the understanding of how you got here. But tell us a little more about that work.
Okay, so I'm in the financial world, so everything is based on that, and it's easy to write, a finance book and, the how-to on that. But where I was coming from is, again, I firmly believe there's 3 things, and it was part of my coaching exercise during my courses that I had taken, that we break things down into bite-sized pieces, right? So we can coach on this. Is it your relationships? Is it so on? And I went even more basic. And instead of these huge numbers of areas that you ask, I found it was 3. Everything boils down to 3, and those 3 always overlap consistently. And that was your emotions, their physical environment, and your finances. So if one of those 3 things are out of whack, then it sends the others out of whack. So trying to get that balance. So to me, I was focused on well-being. And I saw it as a well-being, somebody that has good, positive health, has some balance in all 3 of those areas. And, they're not struggling day to day to feed themselves. They're physically in a good environment. They're not in a negative, scary environment for them physically, and their emotions, they're able to manage, regulate their emotions. And what I felt was that in this project that I felt that I was being called to give out, I needed to figure out a way to get the emotions, the physical, and the financial in there. And it was sort of through trial and error and little sticky notes, putting it on the wall and going, okay, here's the emotional stuff. And I realized, like, going through again with my positive psychology and my nutrition stuff, is the biology and emotion is the same. Like, it's very well linked. So what happens is when someone's given a diagnosis, it is a physical reaction, but we see it as an emotional reaction. And it's really both. But someone is like, okay, you have this, fill in the blank, or your mom has this, and so on. So we're going to feel this emotionally. And in the end, I just figured, okay, we just have to take it through chronologically through someone that's being diagnosed. And it's really, my focus is on the people around the person that's diagnosed, and which I call the loved one. The person that's diagnosed is your loved one. It's not a patient. They're not the diagnosed. They're your mom, your brother, your spouse, what have you. So I purposely call them loved one throughout this. And taking it through the perspective of the people that are around the loved one is where I wanted to really help, because whoever's the loved one, they're getting treatment. Everybody's focusing on them, but who's helping the helper? Who's caring for the caregiver? And there really aren't the resources out there. And the better we can support the caregivers and the rest of the family, the more support that they can give to the loved one that's been diagnosed. So I took it through, let's go chronologically. What do you need first? So when people would reach out, okay, this has happened, what do I do? We have to determine what you're going through first. Well, how are you dealing with this? How are you feeling?
Yeah, that is so important. And people tend to kind of skim over those very elemental pieces. I am going to say that I went to a caregiver retreat a few weeks ago, and AARP handed us 3 workbooks, almost exactly like your book. Like, it is a thing about how do you take care of yourself as a caregiver? What are your financial pieces in this? And then the other one was support and whatnot. But there is a huge need for this information, and it's really lovely that you broke it down, you've chunked it for people to be able to access it without being overwhelmed with this incredible, like, daunting, massive task to take care of somebody. And I don't know the statistics about how many of us are going to be taking care of the
Loved
boomer
ones.
generation right now.
Yeah.
And it's coming, and people need to be reading books like yours so that they can actually get a handle on it before it's an emergency.
Yeah.
And that's right. Like, we're all going to be caregivers, like in some point or another. And a lot of us don't even realize we are caregivers, even when we're in it. And we don't typically say, oh yeah, I'm a caregiver. So when they do surveys, we know that number is higher, because we know the number of people are constantly saying, I'm not a caregiver. I just go over to mom's 3 times a week and cook her dinners and stuff.
That actually came up too at the retreat. People, I think there were 2 women who were like, oh, I'm not really a caregiver, and I have, cousins or neighbors. Like, somebody was driving an hour, like, once a week to take care of her friend's father. Like, that's caregiving.
Absolutely. But you don't see it as that, because it's just, I'm just helping, and I'm just there, and
doing
so
what I should do.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and
it sounds like the perception of who needs this is a challenge, but what are other challenges that you've encountered?
Well, the idea that a diagnosis isn't necessarily a diagnosis where we know they're going to die, like it's imminent. So, and before goodbye is when you look at it as in the ALS, when I'm dealing with somebody with ALS or Parkinson's plus or other motor neuron diseases, which we know are going to be terminal for them. We know it's the goodbye is the final goodbye. But when we look at the goodbye, it's also for people that have parents with Alzheimer's and dementia. So the goodbye in that instance is they're still alive, but they don't recognize you anymore. So you have to make sure you're saying, I love you, and the goodbyes before the actual final goodbye. And it's during that time. So it isn't for something that's imminent. It can be used, like you said, anyone, get this information ahead of time. And it's really a guidance to give ourselves permission that we can give ourselves self-care when we are looking after our families. And, at some points it might just be that, your spouse has a surgery. So it's only going to be a matter of a couple of months. The same information can apply in your own self-care, making sure you're looking after it.
And your financial piece. I mean, even if it is just a surgery, somebody needs to be cooking, and who's going to go out and get groceries, who actually pays the bills, right? Like, if one of the spouses is the sole financial person, how do you prepare for, dad's going to be in bed for 5 weeks and mom's never cut a check? Because that's what we've heard too, right? Like, there are a lot of pieces to this that people just are blindsided by.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, for sure. And I guess walking people through that step of it's the what now, because the what now changes every day and every week, because what you needed a month ago is now changed. So you're constantly coming back, and the conversations will change. So as you have friends and family that come over, the conversation will change. So, one person may be concerned about the finances. And how are we going to support mom or dad or whoever's ill? And, this is the kind of scenario. What are we going to do financially? So they can just dive in and go, okay, well, let's look at the financial aspect and, we're, who is their advisor and so on. Because like you said, like even at that caregiving summit where you have AARP, they're giving you 3 books.
Yeah.
Well, when someone's being diagnosed, they're getting information on their disease, their, oncology and physiotherapy and all these different things. So you've got multiple professionals that you have to deal with, and they're all going to give you books. Or pamphlets to read. And it's like, but again, you've got 20 things handed to you in the doctor's office, but where do I start? Like, what is the important thing? And that's why it's like, well, let's get your mind in the right space.
Start there.
So that you can, so you can look at things rationally, because your mind is, I talk about survival mode. Your brain shuts down. You're going to be asked a ton of questions. You're not thinking straight. And that's on a regular basis. That's constant. So it's like, okay, where do we go from here? And how can you get into that mind state? And that's why in my book, and I recommend this for anybody that's helping, like professionals helping your, your loved ones, is lists. Like give them a list of things, because then they don't have to think. They can just choose one. And that's for anything you're doing.
I will say, we just interviewed a very wonderful person who came up. Remember, Wakil, the 4 different types of grievers?
Of grievers, yeah.
And I feel like you two should talk because, I appreciate that there's a book of how to do this. And it sounds like the onus gets given of devoting this time to caregiving winds up on the shoulders of one person. And if there's a family, there should be like, it's distributed. But she was saying that some people are the emotional caregivers. Some people are like the steady, let's get the stuff done. There's all these different kinds of ways that people show up. And your book is great for the steady, let's go get it done.
Well, it sounds like she also covers the other emotional part too. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. But I think the working, like, to understand, like, it is overwhelming. It's okay. If you can divvy up the work, let's do this book together. Right.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I address that in there as well, because when you're choosing, let's say we're choosing your powers of attorney. So you're, the person who's going to be making your decisions for you. Who do you want to be making your financial decisions, and who your physical and so on? And that's one of the things we discuss. Are they the ones that can make those decisions? Are they going to be in a puddle because they're so emotional and they can't make the decisions themselves? It may be your favorite daughter or your favorite son. Don't choose them if they're not going to be able to actually do the job. So I outline what the actual work is involved with those, so you can make a decision. And then I explain that to, again, the professionals, as we have to make it really easily understood for people. Like, be very clear on how you're going through the information and piecemeal. And what comes up though too, when you're choosing like your powers of attorney and so on, is the family dynamics.
Right. Yeah,
so there's a lot in there too, or, we need to have those discussions, preferably before tough decisions have to be made.
Right.
So we know, the one brother or something may not be part of the family, or an aunt or uncle, their personalities and so on. Let's prepare ahead of time, so we know what's going to happen and how we're going to behave and how we can, plan things out. So that's in there as well.
I love this.
Giving ideas,
I love this.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so needed. And Wakil and I talk about this all the time. Like, we need more people to do this.
Yeah. I mean, the name of our podcast is Let's Talk About This, basically, and get it talked about now. And more you talk about it, the less likely it is to be traumatic,
or derail the family.
Does need to pass. Yeah.
I'm still like in shock over this statistic we heard last week, that 61% of siblings who end up losing their parents at some, at that point in their lives, will never spend time together because there was so much friction at the end of parents' lives that they never want to see each other again. So I'm like, let's take care of that statistic. Like, that should be the reason we want to do this work too.
Yeah. Absolutely. And sorry.
I also really think it's important. We talked about it a bit there, the understanding the needs that the person's going to have, or that the people are going to have. Like, what are you good at, or what do you need to have? Like, I had a friend who, when he died, his wife had never driven a car, and and actually part of the class I hand out an assessment checklist that anybody could use at any time, because it even happens between spouses. My friend called me one day and said, "My wife's out of town. I have no idea how to load the dishwasher." So
Yeah.
just the kind of getting these conversations
Yes.
done ahead of time and start to think about what are going to be the needs, who's going to be able to manage this and who's not, is really important. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's
And it's the gaps like you're talking about there. It's like,
yeah,
let's figure out what your needs are and then figure out what the gaps are.
yeah,
And then we got to find the solutions to that gap. So
yeah.
when you're doing and caregiving, like I've been to the different caregiving conferences and so on, and there are so many different areas where people, find gaps. And it's like, oh,
Right.
we don't have this need. So because they're so unique to every situation, again, having a list. So especially when someone comes up and says, like a neighbor, it could be a
Mhm.
relative, and they'll come up and say, I'm here for you, whatever you need.
That's
But they
right.
throw it out there and leave it blank.
Right. That's
Yeah.
And it's like,
totally true.
yeah, so the onus is now on the caregiver again to
decide.
ask. Well, we're not going to ask. We don't
Mhm.
ask. Like we don't
Yeah.
ask for help. And so again, if you have a list of what needs to be done, like the dog needs to be, walked every morning or whatever, give them a list. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Here's a list, pick something, anything.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it could be the kids need to be taken to their music lesson. There are so many little things,
Mhm.
gardening,
Yeah.
watering my plants, all of those things, put them on a list and let them choose, because then they can choose what works in their schedule.
Right.
And it might be the things that you don't expect.
Right.
And same with food, because people will often drop off food. It's like,
Yeah.
I know you're busy, you're taking them to treatments and so on. Give them a list of foods. I would love, any of the food would help because mom, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Bring me
And,
donuts.
yeah, exactly. Or here's a
gluten-free
list of,
granola.
yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
We're sick.
Yeah, because people will drop off pies.
Right.
Well, if they hate pie or they hate apple
Right.
pie or
All of it.
whatever, yeah, we appreciate it. These are the kind of pies she likes or
Right.
whatever. Like, don't feel bad about that. It's like, you know what? Here's some stuff that somebody told me to write a list. So here you've got it. It is a godsend because now they can fill in the gaps for you.
Right. So I just want to point out that my birth midwife was so lovely that she actually put a sign out in front of my door, and it said, washing machine is here, dishwasher's here, broom and whatever's here. She likes filtered water. She's got her thing. It's like she left a list right at the door
Mhm.
of, if you're going to come in to help support me, because I was on bed rest for 8 weeks after my son was born, and I wasn't allowed to get up. And so I really did need, and there, thank God for strangers. I ended up having random people from around the Front Range come by and help me out because I had 2 kids and couldn't move. That's what we need. Like, as a death midwife, I should be doing that for families, because you set up a sign. You're like, hey, if you're going to come by here, check the plants as you walk through the house, check the laundry, right? Like, these are things that when we're in the acute caregiving role, we just cannot remember. And if we're asked, that won't even light up in our brain cells like, oh yeah, I should probably check the cat box, right? So
Exactly.
it is really great to do that.
Yeah. So it's actually helping people that want to help. Like, it's
That's
just,
right.
it's making their lives easier.
Absolutely.
And I know the onus is on you to write lists, but just keep a notepad. And that's one of the things I talk about. Have notepads around so that
Yeah.
people can write down. It's like, I gave your mom a drink of water, and she had this to eat and that to eat, and so on, so that you can share communications. And communication is a big one in there. So again, having communication prompts, like, how do we bring up those difficult conversations with the family? So how do we get the ball rolling? How do we start the conversation? How do
So
we,
good.
do that? Because we need to communicate with each other, like the siblings. And in the financial industry, it's so commonplace that we're dealing with estates and, brothers, like you said, 60 some percent siblings don't talk anymore. Like after they've settled the
Yes.
estates, and they don't always fight over the money.
Right.
Like, that's what I keep stressing. It's, in divorce, it's called the blue plate syndrome, that they fight over that blue plate that was for whatever, the
Yeah.
Christmas
Right.
cookies for it. It's not the, it's not the thousands of dollars always in the, that they're fighting over the 1,000 here and whatever. It's oftentimes that little item. So having that conversation ahead of time, I talk about, give your loved one the opportunity to have a ceremony if they can. Obviously, it's, every case is different, but have a special day where you have the grandkids all over and you have high tea or something fun and fancy, and give them the things that you want to make sure that they have if they've got their eye on something there.
Oh, yeah.
It's, so then it's not happening behind the scenes, and all of a sudden years later it's like, hey, where did the such and such go?
Yep.
And
Yep.
then the like you said, after the estate's done, that's when the arguments happen and everybody's, the
Oh.
fights begin, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's so good.
avoiding some of that, and yeah.
Well, you talked about resources that, resourcing ourselves. I think you mentioned that as part of what, helping people have the resources they need. Is there, what do you do? What would you recommend, or what do you do yourself as you're working through all this to keep yourself resourced?
I think the key thing, and we did already touch on this, the key thing is self-care. Like when someone is a caregiver, or even they're not admitting they're caregivers, we really need to focus on self-care and saying no. So I have a list of things for self-care. You can't do them all. You just pick one or two or whatever. But the number one thing we need to learn is to say no. So it can be as simple as when someone says, I want to come over and visit or whatever, I want to do such and such, learning to be able to say no and leaving it there. We don't need to explain ourselves. It's like, no, thank you. I appreciate it, but no, not at this time. And it's sort of working through that. So looking after ourselves and boiling it down to the resources and figuring out what it is that you actually need in what area. So is it something physical that needs to be done? So is it a renovation for the bathroom so that they can start, we can take the wheelchair in there, and figure out, okay, financially, is this viable? Do we need to move out of the house while this is being done? And that kind of thing. So sitting down, having family meetings is where I would find the number one resource first, is having communication with the family. Then we can take it outside and go, okay, what other resources do we need? So if you have a disease like ALS, well, you're going to need physical supports, whether it's special chairs, special wheelchairs. You have to get your name in quick because it's going to take months to get those to you. It's not instant. So getting the special bars and handles on the bathroom walls to be able to get in and out of the tubs, or whatever it is, a ramp to get in and out of your house temporarily, getting the permits, getting the people involved to do that. That was actually one of the areas with my sister-in-law who had ALS. They had discussed, she was an avid gardener. She loved being outside. She spent most of her time after work, she'd be outside. And there were only steps at her back door to go down to the backyard. And so they discussed, okay, we have to get a ramp. Let's get a ramp and do that. Time goes by, nobody's doing anything. I'm sitting there visiting with her, and she's almost in tears because she just wants to be outside at her garden, and she can't get out there. A couple of us can help carry her and so on. So it's like, that's when advocacy comes into play. So that's one of the things, what can I help with? And, they had already measured. So it's like, why aren't we doing this? Like, why has this not happened yet? So it just took someone to pick up the phone, get the quote, and say, okay, deliver the wood. Now we just need the people. Wood will be here on, in 2 days. Get it done. So it's advocating on behalf of that person, because she was not going to do it. And there were many times, and it's very commonplace. They're not going to ask for, especially big asks. They're not going to ask for help. They might ask for a blanket or something, but even then, they often don't say that they're cold. The lights are too bright in here, that kind of thing. So it's trying to be asking questions of them, how comfortable they are, and, that kind of thing. But I don't want to miss on embracing the time you have, because a lot of this stuff that we've talked about were challenges. But it's like, other than celebrating with, someone and handing out the little trinkets around the house or the whatever it is, furniture and so on, is embracing the moments we have with our loved one and reminiscing,
Oh,
having
yeah.
conversations about their life and getting that down on paper, getting it on video, getting it on recordings so that information isn't lost once they're gone.
Yeah.
Where did you meet mom? And, where did you, what was your first date? What was your favorite? One of my biggest things that I love to have my, anybody ask is favorites, because that's an easy one. That's an easy door opener. Like, what was your favorite holiday? What was your favorite, birthday party? Or what was your favorite trip? Your favorite meal? All of those kind of things opens up conversation when you're sitting there. Because, if somebody's ill and they're bedridden, especially, what do you talk about? That, and as an aging parent, especially if they've got dementia and Alzheimer's, get that information on tape, on recording.
Yeah.
And if they're physical enough, like they're still going outside and doing things, get them to cook their favorite recipe, get it on film. So now the grandkids who aren't even born yet, perhaps, they have a video of grandma making their, or that Nona making their special spaghetti sauce, or that secret ingredient, right? So, getting that down and embracing spending time with them and thinking of the fun times, not just the what's going to happen.
Appreciate that. That's really important. Yeah. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Well,
Yes.
I think we're close to being done. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Did you, is there anything else that we haven't, I mean, I think you kind of did that just now. You just said that really you want to really emphasize that the making your time together. Yeah. That's really, is there anything else that we left before we start?
Like, a lot of people don't do the making memories, like consciously making memories. So again, if they can go somewhere, get the family together to go to the beach, get an ambulance that actually just transport, like an ambulance transport, to take them to the location they want to go if they need to be wheelchair and you don't have the accessibility. Get them to where they always loved going. Get the family together for a special day. Get souvenirs and things from that location, sand from the beach that you took them to, and have that positive memory for going forward that they loved to do, and that you can embrace that. And that translates to final days. Like, we haven't really talked about the final days, and if we know, like with whether it's made and we know they have a DNR or what have you, explaining those things to them first of all, so that they're aware and the rest of the family understands what's entailed. And a big thing is, we don't have an opinion when it comes to someone else's. It's allowing them, the only person's opinion that counts is the loved ones. And they're the ones that get to have that opinion. But if you know what their favorite things are, and if they are, taking advantage of MAID, or even if they know that, okay, today I'm not going to use my breathing apparatus and we know we're going to pass. So, such as in my instance with my sister-in-law, we knew the day was coming. She didn't need to use MAID. She couldn't breathe on her own. And she wanted to go and pass when it wasn't Christmas, wasn't around somebody's birthday. She didn't want to have those memories, of that for everybody else. So we knew it was her final day. So we had a celebration on that final day. We had mimosas, bellinis. She could barely sip, but she was drinking that. We had played her favorite music. I've got videos still that I videotaped her trying to sing. And we FaceTimed all the relatives that couldn't come in because it was during COVID. So FaceTimed her friends and family, watched her favorite movies. And so that horrible day, like of her last day, we still have decent memories. Like, we still have some positive memories of laughing with her and telling her funny jokes and the things that she used to always say, and go through her funniest, fabulous movies, because we had hours. We knew it wasn't going to be an instant thing with her. And we had hours to embrace her, and everybody got the opportunity to come in and have a moment with her, to hug, to cry. We're all going to miss, the joy that we've had, and so on. So embracing that instead of avoiding it. And too many people avoid that scenario. And if you're spiritual, that's fabulous, because then we have an understanding of maybe something greater than us, and we can embrace that transition.
Yeah,
But a
that
lot
can
of
be a
people
time to
don't
do that.
but a lot
Yeah,
of people
yeah.
don't have that. So if we can make some other type of ritual at least, and embrace that day as being
Yeah,
special, that we will always remember for the rest of our lives, and trying to make it a little bit more, I guess, bright,
yeah,
as opposed to
yeah.
the dark and dinginess of the transition, and
Mhm.
having that love with everybody around, and music, like we had music, and
Yeah,
and
I
and
love
so
that.
on, and
Yeah.
to make it
You mentioned a
special.
couple times, you mentioned MAID, and I want to just make sure it's understood by those who may not know that is an acronym for Medical Assistance in Dying. Sounds like you
Mhm.
might be in Canada,
I am. Yes.
which has that available
Localized,
everywhere
yep.
in Canada. In the States here, we have, I think, a dozen states now or so.
Smattering of states,
Yeah.
yep.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, that's and part of
Uh-huh.
that, part of why I want to make sure we, first of all, let people know what that is, but secondly, that often is a time for people who've been able to make that choice to decide they're going to have a celebration before.
Uh-huh.
They can celebrate they can have their memorial with their friends before they die.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's come up
Yeah.
before us a few times. So thank
and
you for
and
that.
planning and planning
Yeah,
what they want. So when I'm gone, this is what I want.
yeah, you
And
can do that as well. And
yeah,
we actually, yeah,
when I was taking my positive psychology course, that was one of the things we had to do, is do our own funeral, and our write our own eulogy.
oh nice.
That type of thing. It's like, okay, this is great, but it gets you tapping into that thought process, because someone's going to have to do it,
Yeah,
at some
yeah,
point, or at least be told this is what I want or don't
yeah.
want
It's a great
afterwards.
great gift to give to our
Hmm.
loved ones to do all
Hmm.
this. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you. It's
Yeah.
really, really beautiful what you're doing.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it. We have a quote that
Yes.
we can end with. Do you want to read your quote or do you want us to?
Oh,
You
go
gave us
ahead.
two.
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
This is one quote that is from your own work that is, says, give of yourself, don't give up on yourself, or don't give up yourself.
Uh-huh.
Self-care is not selfish. It is essential.
Uh-huh.
So important, so true, and
Uh-huh.
exactly what we've
Uh-huh.
been emphasizing here.
Uh-huh.
And should I
Absolutely.
And
read the other one?
sure.
All right. So this is by Charlotte Bronte. Crying does not indicate that you are weak. Since birth, it has always been a sign that you are alive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. We find gender differences, and men typically, it's like they feel guilty if they cry, and they're, when they're with their loved one, and they're sad that, you've been diagnosed with this. They don't feel that I can't, um, I can't control this.
Mhm.
And none of us control what's going to be happening. And that's one of the emotions that you go through as soon as you're diagnosed, because your
Yeah.
body is betraying you. I don't have control now. It's in the doctor's hands, or what have you. And quite often we don't allow ourselves to cry. That
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
you're going to be missing this stuff, and it's like, no, embrace the tears. Like, it's a
Exactly.
chemical. You need the chemical release. Like, we
Yeah, yeah,
we need this. So
yeah.
embrace it, where it's part of our life, to
It's
be
kind
able
of
to
funny
cry.
that
And
in this group right here, I'm more likely to be crying than Ana Luisa, who is
Yes,
just
I am a very rare and random crier.
Mhm. Yeah. So,
anyway.
but embrace that. Like, we're
Yeah,
allowed to. Yeah.
we love that. That's very important. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank
we
you.
look forward to keeping in touch and hearing more about what you're doing, and getting a
Thank you.
chance to read your book. And that'll all be in the podcast notes. And thank you, everybody, for
Excellent.
joining us. Please
That's right.
watch, spread the word, and share it, and like it, and do all that good stuff for us, and subscribe. And
Yep.
we'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care.
Adios.
Adios.
Bye. Thank you.
Grief and loss, conversations about the end of life.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to Charles Heath, the composer of the original music you are listening to now.
And of course, thanks to you, our audience, and all of our amazing guests. Please come back next week for another great episode. Share this with your friends, family, and community. We hope you will subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Substack. Each guest's additional information will be found in the podcast notes. And of course, if you have a good end-of-life story to share, please reach out. We are always eager to hear from you.